Every self-respecting town needs to wall its cities to protect its population, and every empire worthy of its name needs to have the ability to take fortresses and extend its domains. Learn how the Romans besieged enemy castles here and now. Every good siege begins with a good plan. Firstly, Roman generals would study the fortress they wanted to take, to basically see the feasibility of the mission, and they mainly asked themselves two questions. Is there enough material in the surroundings of the city to carry out a siege? That is, were there trees to get wood and build siege machines? Soil and stones to fill the path to the siege towers, or to prepare the ground for planting the artillery? This first question was vital, because if the answer was negative, all the necessary materials would have to be brought from some Roman supply base. Which leads us to the second question. How to supply the army? The most desirable is by river. You load the boats to the top and the water does the rest. Or the rowers in the wind, depending on the direction of the current. If there is no river, you have to transport the materials using pack animals, which is very costly in time and money, although it is still viable. But it's not just about transporting the materials, which at worst are transported only once. You have to carry food and water regularly, in addition to ammunition, spare parts, and reinforcements, while in the opposite direction the wounded would go. Let's assume there are enough materials in the area, and that supplies will arrive via cargo mules through a trail. Okay, we move on to the next phase, the reconnaissance. Now it's time to decide where the camp will be established, from which the entire siege will be coordinated, and where the main Roman force will be. Ideally, this decision would be made before arriving at the siege site, either through maps or through information from people who have been there before. It was easy for the first camp not to be the final one, as the general cannot know 100% what is the best option to establish it, without first seeing the area with his own eyes. Once the general is on the ground and has chosen the place where the camp will be set up, it's time to decide how to take the castle. It was common to carry out a first assault to test the defenses. It could be a half-hearted assault or one with real fervor, depending on the general's expectations of that first attempt. This first assault was usually carried out with ladders, which we will talk about in a future video. If the assault ended successfully, perfect. The castle had already been taken. But if the assault failed, it had two consequences. The first was that the Roman general was already aware of the defender's defensive capability. Secondly, the general could choose from three paths. The first was a copy of the initial assault. This would occur if the first assault had been narrowly rejected, or if the general believed that the enemy's defensive capability was very low. For example, an assault with ladders at various points on the wall simultaneously would stretch the defensive forces too thin, and some might be successful. The second route involved extending the siege a little longer, as it required siege machines and artillery. The artillery was brought from the supply base, usually disassembled, and upon arrival at the site, all the pieces were assembled by the engineers. As for the siege machines, these were manufactured on site. Hence, the general checked in the first phase if there were supplies near the city he wanted to take. Siege towers, battering rams, turtles, and even ramps were built. Of these four types of machines, the towers and battering rams are the most known for their appearance in movies. The turtles, also known as baineas or AO muscles, offered protection to the soldiers. But the siege machine, to call it some more unknown form that the Romans built, was the ramp. But I'm going to leave you with the doubt that in the next video of the Rome series I will talk in depth about all these machines. The third way is the longest and most costly in time and resources, as it consisted of letting the enemy starve to death, or that he finally surrendered. To achieve this, the general had to make sure that no one could enter or leave the city. To do this, forts could be built at regular intervals surrounding the city, in addition to trenches and palisades that connected them. A clear example of this method is the siege of Numancia. where the city was completely surrounded by a palisade and by ditches and stakes, so that no Numantian could escape. The link to the Numancia series video is provided above if you wish to watch it. The problem with this method is not only whether the defenders can escape or not, but also that it gives time for the enemy's allies to come to their aid, in which case the besieger will have to face enemies on two fronts at the same time. To solve this problem, Julius Caesar built 2 rings of fortifications around Alesia, with the Romans between both, so that the legions could face the enemy reinforcements and the city defenders who were trying to break the siege. As we all know, Julius Caesar emerged victorious. The problem with building siege machines or defenses is that the engineers are completely at the mercy of the enemy, so it is necessary to protect them in some way. One option is to assign troops to guard day and night, but this can dangerously disperse the attacking army. So rudimentary first defenses were built to protect the engineers while they built the real ones, or the siege machines. Once the engineers have finished building, the positions are occupied by the legionnaires. In the case of siege machines, they had to be protected very carefully, as the defenders usually made sorties to start a fire and cause a delay of days in the siege. The world of siege machines is very interesting. The different siege towers, battering rams, or ramps like the one in Jerusalem, or even tunnels under the walls to collapse them. But again, I'm going to leave you in doubt. I will talk about all these topics in the next video of the Rome series. Here ends the Roman preparations for conducting a siege. I hope you liked it and that you are eager to see how the attacks on the walls were carried out. If so, like and subscribe to stay updated with new videos.